Oh, dry eyes. It's like clay.
Okay, we're warming up for an episode. We'll start in a few minutes. Checking all feeds.
I'm waiting for like notifications then of the other shows that we don't want to also compete with. I mean, it's fair. It's a Friday night. Lots of things happening on Friday night, despite quarantine.
I don't see the one on Facebook yet. The one on YouTube, I'm in.
It's funny because I just tagged you in it.
Yeah, I think it's just a delay.
Yes.
There, I see it now.
Nope, that doesn't get me YouTube. It gets me Arkansas State University. Because I type STU and then autocomplete, but I write ATU, ASU, and then it gave me that. So, getting the video link.
Yes.
Could be a night for tea later. I feel like tea. Old person drinks. Okay. Hey, Karen. Oof, these shirts are not fit for public consumption. It's like,
They're like super snug now
yeah.
compared to when we first got them. So I guess they shrunk.
Yeah, I guess they shrank. It's my fault because of the dryer.
But we still might be able to find a way. Like, I don't know.
I think the answer is still lose more weight.
Wasn't there a way to?
Although my arms look big. In a funny way.
So how to unshrink clothes? Use lukewarm water and a gentle soap. Fill the sink, let it soak, and then you lay it out on a flat towel. This will absorb the liquid, it'll spread out.
Ah, okay.
So we can try that.
And not run it through the dryer.
And
so far, it's just this shirt, to be fair. Like,
yeah.
all the other shirts we got, they're okay. It's just this one.
Which admittedly, when we fitted it, it had a nice feeling. So I guess it's the material. The material was the type that would compress more in hot temperature. So maybe it's a cold water bath sort of clothing.
Hey, Mitch, it is not National Heroes Day. It is the Day of Valor, or Bataan Day, or Araw ng Kagitingan. National Heroes Day is in August. But just to let you know, let's celebrate the right holiday.
And then we're keeping this episode short and sweet because we want to be able to support.
Samael
says is having his birthday show at 10.
There's no specific time, but knowing them, they're probably waiting for around 10.
So we'd like to support that. And to do that best, we shouldn't take too long.
Yeah, so we'll still have a good time.
And then what else?
Karen's connection's frustrating her. I am sorry to hear that. I don't know if you want to try the YouTube link. Sometimes that works a little better with inconsistent net connections versus Facebook. It's your phone.
Yeah.
Like this picture's like really close. Who got stuck in the sink?
Mm-mm. With the beady eyes.
It's a lizard in the sink.
What was that previous group chat we had?
Hmm?
Was it this one? Yeah, it was this one.
What?
The previous group chat. What's the numbers there? There you go. Okay, you can send it to you.
More people to bother?
Yeah, because sometimes they don't know that there's an episode. But yes, I guess we can start in 1 minute. That way we will have time to watch the other shows as well. Alright, alright.
Yes, Mitch. The egg lives there now.
Mitch found it.
It's in the same spot every time.
So
It's not a
far.
game.
So far.
Hey, yeah.
Anyway, might as well start. This is Toby.
And this is Rocky.
And if it's your first time here, welcome to Baduy Pride, a little space on the internet where we talk about anything we want.
It is completely unscripted and not entirely accurate, but at least it's honest. Join us to talk about everything and anything random live.
And if it's not your first time here, thank you so much for joining us again. Tonight's episode is an episode based on the fact that it is Araw ng Kagitingan, which in the Philippines is...
Okay, it is Araw
sorry,
ng Kagitingan in the
translates
Philippines.
to
The Day of Valor, but also that can be termed as Bataan Day.
because we remember the sacrifices and the courage that was shown by many who fought for our freedoms.
Yeah, this is a distinctly military holiday.
Mhm.
I mean, when you think about how you define valor, it tends to be a very martial trait.
Mhm.
But we'll just talk about heroes in general.
So yeah, so we thought it'd be nice to make this a chance to talk about the heroes we admire.
Which is going to give us a problem on National Heroes Day, because then what would we talk about then? The valorous.
Yes.
So I don't know how you want to start this, Toby.
Well, we could start on a more personal level, then go into more general. For example, as hokey and as Baduy as it will be, I'll have to cite my parents as one of my heroes. My mom and my dad have always been super supportive of no matter how weird I was as a kid. Preschool years, well, not to say preschool years, but in the wee early years of my life, I wrote that poem about, oh frog so fat, you are now flat. Look at all the flies because you have died or something like that.
You have no eyes?
And my parents actually still kept that poem and they encouraged me to keep writing. Whereas most parents would probably think their kids has problems and tell them to stop. So, yeah, to dad who is no longer with us and is now celebrating his first year in heaven. And to mom who continues to be strong and very selfless to the point that even Rocky now gets surprised at the things I bring back when I get to visit mom. Parang ano naman yan, may fruit na naman yan. And then there's not just fruit, but there's clothes and there's...
I guess I'm on the list now, which is cool.
But yeah, I'd have to count them among that.
That's fair. And like, I mean, I obviously totally admire my mom. She is a very strong character reference, whether on an individual, personal level, or even if you look at like in terms of her career and her achievements.
She's legendary in her career.
Yes, and it's like it's always you're proud to be associated with her, and I don't think she'll ever be Rocky's mom in the professional field, but she'll always be Donna Grande's son, so to speak. And I guess for me it always ties back to like a grand aunt used to warned her that early on they felt like I exhibited signs that I may be on the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
And then mom's story, whenever she tells this, is that then that just made her like have very, very determined conversations with me,
Mm-hmm.
which is the equivalent of literally holding my head
Mm-hmm.
so that I would focus on her as she talked because I was not responding to people calling my name
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. So uh, if I were anywhere along the lines of on the spectrum,
Mm-hmm.
she pulled me back to the more functional side of it.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been actually tested, so that's better off not knowing.
I like minus comment wherein birthdays should be celebrated to honor moms.
Yeah, I mean, like, because you personally did nothing on your birthday. You just came out, but
Mm-hmm.
all the work was because of your parents. So I
Mm-hmm.
guess that's like that's a fair thing to remember and
Mm-hmm.
consider that your parents have helped you are the very reason you are here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, who else you in your heroic circles as we expand out?
So other heroes that we could state, again, for me, it's still in the personal level. Um, Although this again is a situation of the person not remembering
What?
or not realizing it. But so there's an old schoolmate named Daniel.
Mm,
I won't give his full name out of respect of his privacy.
okay.
Um, but he actually ended up stopping me from doing something suicidal when I was younger.
Mm,
And he doesn't remember. But it was one of those times when I was much more imbalanced and I decided to try doing it. When in the late hours of the night, he suddenly called because he supposedly had a dream that I was hitting my chest over and over and it
okay.
scared him. So he called me, and we were classmates, but we weren't close. But he called me just to check how I was doing.
Oh, okay. And this is like a
And
landline call. Oof.
yes, and this was me in the bathroom around the wee hours of the morning, thinking no one now will notice. But then, my kuya wakes up from the phone call. He's like, Obi, sagutin mo na. Ganyan, forcing me to step out of the bathroom.
Mm,
So it interrupted my plans and it changed my life. When I talked to him about it, and the few times I reached out to him, he doesn't remember.
wow.
He doesn't
Ooh, did
recall
it
this
really
ever happening.
happen?
Or maybe it happened, but it never stood out to him as something
Probably.
important. But it's part of why I really have my faith as well. I really feel there's a greater force that is present, and whether religions interpret that force correctly or not depends on the individual for me to decide on. But I definitely have felt the hand of a greater force present.
Mm. Well, I guess in close to home circles, and like I definitely admire my older sister. I mean, like,
Hi, Tom.
um,
I don't know which Tom this is.
yeah, uh, you know, she went through a lot on her
Mm-hmm.
own, right? And then she made that early decision to like start working in Singapore,
Mm-mm.
and it's never easy to decide
Mm-hmm.
to move away from your home country
And
or
to
home.
stake out on something,
Yeah, and like
to be a pioneer in that way.
yeah, and then she stuck with it, and then over the course of her time, there changed industries, and
Mm-mm.
then
And made her own company.
yeah, and then now I work for her.
Mm-hmm.
So well, I work with her. This is how I
Mm-hmm.
will always choose to see it, and I'm glad that it's definitely one of the few cases where I mean, so many people before I went into it
Mm-hmm.
warned me like working with family is dangerous and all that, but then I think it just speaks to the nature of our relationship
Mm-hmm.
um, that we're totally fine. And then I mean like there were initial adjustments in the beginning, of course, but then
Mm-hmm.
over time it's like oh my god we're so great. And then mine is like was she the one who got me on keto? Yes, she's responsible for getting me on keto. And
And previously corn.
no, she didn't get me.
She didn't get you corn.
Not directly because Corn was our client,
Okay.
and so I tried the product.
Okay.
But in terms of like she got me on keto, and then so which is ultimately a life changing or possibly life saving
Mm-hmm.
thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I still have a ways to go, but
Mm-hmm.
I've lost so much weight since then. So yeah, definitely my sister.
Andre shares his personal hero is his aunt in the U.S. Provided most. Oh, provided most of what he has. She gave him whatever he wanted when he was a kid. Kahit hindi siya yung anak, was treated as such.
That's nice.
That's nice. Hey RJ, nice to have you with us. Um, just in case, to Tom, who we don't recognize the last name, this show is
Yeah.
very interactive. Please comment. We will include your comments in the show somehow. If you want to share your own thoughts on the topic, if you want to comment on what we're talking about, please feel free to do so. Nikki, yes, these shirts are some of the shirts we got from Old Navy.
Yeah.
They were on sale when we got them, so hopefully, if you want similar shirts, you can still find a chance to
But
get
this was
them.
super. This was the super bargain bin one
Yes.
before the recent big sale.
So you might want to try to find them before they run out.
Yeah.
And then next, I would state would be Carlo Vergara.
Ooh.
Because
Hey,
Carl
Carlo.
Carl really was the big one to push me towards, make your stuff. And
Okay.
it was in high school when I first encountered comics by the Alamat comic line. So that was everyone, including Budget, Jerry, Carl, etc., David Ontiveros. And it just made me realize, oh my gosh, you can make your own comics.
Mhm.
I still have those old comics somewhere there in the cabinet. But when I saw those, they inspired me and moved me so much that I wrote a fan letter.
Mhm.
Because the comic they made, Flashpoint, was really super cool for me. And Carl got also touched by the letter that he decided to pay me a visit. So he visited me in Don Bosco, Makati, and I was freaking out. It felt like it literally felt like I was, meeting an idol, despite, for him, naman, it was like just a few works. So how can you be seeing me that way? But from that point on, I realized, if you really want to create something, you want to get it out there, just release it. And even if it doesn't look like it's a success, just having one or two people, you know, be affected or touched by the work is already a success because it means your work resonated with someone else.
Okay. Karen cites her mom because she raised them as a single parent, kept their heads above water despite challenges, and now they're definitely able to live a lot more comfortably. So yeah, I mean that's an achievement, definitely something admirable. I'm out of people in my personal circles.
Really?
I'm a very terrible person.
No, that's okay.
I mean, like, no, I guess it's like I don't. Oh well, one is that my family's always been very insular in the sense that it's always been our primary like unit, and we were never super close to the extended. And then in terms of friends, I'm not great with friends, or at least for my school age years. I mean, like there are people that I still remember everyone. I remember most of them, but then I definitely kept to myself a lot, and I've been very antisocial for most of my life. So that's a bit of a miss. I guess abstract. I was trying to think about it. Which is always like my struggle. Because even like when you used to have like slum book question, like who are your idols? Who do you admire? I don't know. I don't know. Or I think it's because I overthink it, and then like, well, this person has some good stuff, but then is also like terrible in
Or
other
just not
ways.
count him as the hero.
Yeah.
Something like
It's
that.
like it's easy to find fault. So I
Mhm.
guess there are aspects of people that I appreciate. So
Which is part of what this topic is about. When do you start defining someone to be a hero? See, we can talk about that more. But just to wrap up mine,
talk about definitions.
because we only want to finish this within 30 minutes because we want to support the other shows. I'll have to cite one of my other heroes is Mon and Rupert, who
Oh, that's nice.
who really gave
That's
me
nice.
a place to be myself, and it it was really life changing for me to discover Obar. Well, discover meaning to learn that it exists, not that I found it. But
Obar.
because even when
Gay
I
Columbus.
had friends who knew that I wasn't straight,
Mm,
it still was very different from just being myself,
okay.
and that did not really happen until Obar, and it was only at Obar that I realized, there's no need for pretensions. There's no need for worrying if people will find you too obnoxious or will not relate with what you're doing. If they don't, then they don't. I don't care. But back when I was with friends, there was always that it wasn't naman a negative pressure, but it was sort of if most of your friends are straight,
Mm.
and even if they accept you, you won't feel that comfortable being as gay as you want because they won't really relate, and it suddenly just feels like you know, okay, maybe not here. And that's why I count Mon and Rupert as among my heroes because they really welcomed me in so many more ways than one, including literally because they noticed me eventually alone and were
Mhm.
like, "Okay, stay with us now when you're alone."
And then, by that virtue, they welcomed actually so many
Mm-mm.
people, and that's why so many people have gravitated and like stayed with Obar over the years,
Mm-mm.
and even things like, there are some decisions about the way that they run the bar that aren't necessarily the best business decisions,
Mm-mm.
but then they're like what they wanted to do
To help people,
to help
to
people out.
to
It's like
support
it goes
others.
back to even as early as why Malate was open every day, even
Mm-mm.
though obviously Mondays and Tuesdays were like very light, slower days.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean there were. It was not just a business, but also like a community service that they were trying
Yes.
to do. That they were trying to
And
provide
we did
a place
ask
for people
we
to
did
go.
ask them that before,
Yes, we
and
did.
they did mention that they just wanted to make sure that there was always a place for someone like us to go to
Mm-hmm.
when they leave the house.
So that's super
Mhm.
nice. Anything else?
Beyond those, I think that I cannot end the list without mentioning to all our frontliners who are, despite all the odds and despite them, continue to do what they have to do because they know no one else will.
Mm-hmm.
And we really appreciate all the effort, all the sacrifices you're all making, which is why we're doing what we can, which is we're staying in hopes of
Yes.
helping reduce the cases that are continuing to grow because of all these political whatevers. But yes, almost there.
Too late. Too late.
But yeah, I guess that would round out my list of heroes. I could go even deeper to more specific instances where certain people inspired me, but I think generally that is a nice summation
Yeah,
of the key heroes in my life.
that's a good list.
Mhm.
I mean, like if I were to highlight anyone else, then I'd highlight you
Mhm.
because that it's been inspiring to see you produce so many things and
Aw.
to put stuff out there. And then I know that it's been a difficult 2 years in the industry, and it's hard being an
Mhm.
independent
Mhm.
game designer.
Thank
But
you.
then you've been barreling through, and then Models is finally out, and then
Mhm.
the second moment is
Mhm.
around the corner. So which is
Yeah.
great. And then it just becomes the question of what's next, Toby, because now that those things that you've been struggling with for the past few months are finally on their way
Mhm.
into release, then now you got to figure out your next thing, which
Yeah.
is I'm sure it's going to be great. And then beyond that, just your passion for the hobby and
Mhm.
still running all these tabletop RPGs for people. It's so much work. It's so much work. And then
Mhm.
I should probably run
Mhm.
more. But then when I think about running, then it's like, oh my god, there's so many things, and it just drives me crazy about all the prep
Mhm.
that I feel like I need to do, and I know it'll never be enough prep because people are people and will venture into unexpected
Mhm.
story avenues.
Thank
So,
you.
rah. So yeah.
So, moving then to beyond just examples, we then bring up the question: what makes someone a hero? And this is to validly explain also why you are selective on who you count as heroes, because it's a true reaction that, um, like I remember when I was younger, and then there was like name someone you admire, and I was struggling with that question because I realized I admired fictional characters more than real people back then.
Possibly. Man, I don't even have a lot of those, you
And
know.
and that was because back then fictional characters were idealized.
That's
They
true.
you did not really see any other aspect to them. But
Now
now,
everybody's gray
yeah,
and gritty and
and
snidery.
like for example, now you have people who are so no, oh, I love that guy who's in charge of Canada, and then you have someone else go, yeah, but he's attacking the, you know.
There's always
So
something.
there's
There's like always a reason to cancel
yeah,
someone.
and it's now so hard sometimes to really identify someone as someone you could see as a hero or someone you could see as someone to admire because there's almost this requirement they have to be super perfect.
Hmm. I guess my challenge is that I mean I've always been very self-sufficient,
Hmm.
and that the way that my mom has always challenged me to do better is just is like you start with the assumption that you should be
Hmm.
the best, and then when you are not, then why not? And then it's basically, yeah, so like if you didn't get a perfect score, did someone get a perfect score, and why wasn't that you? So then it's hard to like really like look to people in admiration
Hmm.
when you are then just trying to forge your own path, and um even when you do well, you must still do better next time. And that's
Hmm.
sort of been like the course and cadence of my life.
Hmm.
And so it's not so much uh, that I don't think other people are without admirable
Hmm.
qualities. It's just that I don't peg my life accordingly,
Hmm.
and then in the end, because it's gonna boil down to me, and then I'm just gonna have to do it.
and
So
and it's interesting how even like on the ongoing show of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, that idea of trying to define what makes someone a hero
mm,
is a topic they're exploring. Despite all the Marvel movies wherein we answered that question with Captain America,
yeah,
because we did have a great how do we do this exploration of Captain America's story of how he really started as this, you know, um, scrawny guy who had idealistic dreams but might not make the cut, and how even later on, despite being a super soldier and all that, we had him compared to people like Tony Stark and the demands of what's right and what's proper or what should be done and what must be done. And
hmm
it's an interesting thing that it still is worth exploring even after all that.
Andre says he thinks admiration for heroes also applies to their flaws and weaknesses, but how they
Hmm.
overcome those weaknesses is what matters. And that's an interesting point. But then like there's like I guess that's the challenge also something when you think about public figures,
Hmm.
because then you don't always know all aspects. Then you'll only know what comes out in the media.
Hmm.
And so you have a distorted view of that person. For example, I appreciate Elon Musk's being a futurist,
Hmm.
and of the tech people in our generation, I think he is definitely one of the most distinct futurists
Hmm.
who is successful and driven enough to actually contribute to like potentially the long-term betterment of mankind.
Hmm.
Hence things like
And
SpaceX.
this is despite the fact that he seems to tick all the boxes of warning signs we look for super villains in the making.
Yes,
It's
because on the same
Mhm.
virtue, like he's very difficult to work with,
Mhm.
and downright he may be, as a person, he's probably a dick. I mean, like, he's that kind of a person that
Mhm.
he just does not suffer idiots, well. But
Mhm.
then, so then, how do you balance that? Like, do you really like? If you are someone who says I want to be the next Elon Musk, and then like so you want to be a dick, so
And I guess it also helps to realize that likability and what you accomplish are not necessarily hand in hand.
and more often than not they're not.
More
I
often than
mean,
not,
like
they'd be in opposing
the
poles
most successful people tend to have stepped on so many others to get there,
because it was the
whether
only
consciously or
way.
not.
Because it
Yeah.
was the only way they could enact the change or make things happen. Um, there was that adage. I can't remember who's the name of the person who said it, but the enemy of the enemy of development or the enemy of perfection is good. Because like if you're doing something and it's good, then you'll think that's enough and you can stop. But then you have to go beyond good, and that tends to rattle a lot of people because like using a more clear example. Um, Maybe it's good that we're keeping people off the streets, but that's not enough. We have to do more. And yes, the more might not be popular. That might mean limiting more of what you want to do. That might mean spending more. That might mean making certain people angry. But sometimes you have to go more than just what's good enough to make things change better.
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess like then so it's easy to like maybe to just focus on aspects of people or
Mhm.
like certain things. Like, I mean, like I appreciate Neil Gaiman as a writer, and then
Mhm.
he's definitely one of those writers that makes you feel like anybody can write, or that
Mhm.
you have the power to also contribute to worlds of fiction on your own individual basis. Not that I have been successful in this matter.
Mhm.
And then since I have not been successful, then I'm like, am I really taking the any sense of admiration truly to heart, or am I just saying it? And
Mhm.
then I see, then I get into these like spirals
Mhm.
of uh, no, just no. So
Or like when there was a time when if you wanted a perfect example, the best answer was Mother Teresa.
oh
But then there was the uncovered information of how there were people who were suffering and didn't have to,
yeah,
but due to differences of their perception or perspectives on how or what suffering means, they ended up suffering.
hmm,
So now you have people saying, it's evil, she's worse, she's manipulative. But is that really the best way to say that? Given, it's sometimes it's a more complicated issue than black and white. And when it comes to people we can choose to admire as heroes, it can be tricky. I remember I had friends who once really cited um, Joss Whedon as a
hmm,
very pro woman because of the material
because
that
of
he was working
the
on.
stories he crafts.
And
Yeah,
now, of course, it's a totally different story when you talk about Joss
that he's a
Whedon.
hardcore misogynist, and
So,
obviously his hatred of women is hard coded
and
into his stories.
and does that then make my friends before wrong? Were they fooled? Or were they just really seeing the heroism from a certain perspective?
Are the heroes, especially ones we don't know, like is the decision that someone is a hero is really just a projection, and then does it, so is a person an effective hero
Mhm.
when he or well, when they inspire
Mhm.
action or change in another person, whether or not it is through any conscious or deliberate action, then it's just
Mhm.
because of what another person gleaned from their experiences that becomes the cause for heroic
Mhm.
inspiration.
Because the sad but truth is, if you want to look at a person in a negative light, it is impossible not to if you're really looking for a reason. And it
Hmm.
could even be something as simple as, oh yeah, so this writer inspired you to write. But because of him, this other writer was ignored.
Yeah, or he hates dogs
So
too.
he showed favoritism. He's bad. And it's stuff like that. And it's a weird world of how there's this demand for applicability across all the spectrums.
Hence that statement that always floats out also, that you should never meet your heroes. And
Mm-hmm.
then like, because again, because you have an idealized perspective of why you admire said person, and
Mm-hmm.
and it may be because you don't know everything about that person and you go with it. And that's why superheroes kind of work a lot easier. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like, me, like, I'm a,
Unless they're superheroes who have years of content,
yeah,
and then that's when you go, how you feel that way? But in issue ganyan ganyan ganyan,
that
he
there's a,
beat up his wife.
so like me, like I like the fundamental aspects
Mm-hmm.
of Spider-Man. I mean, I started with Spider-Man because it was a nerd. It was
Mm-hmm.
essentially the story of a nerd who becomes a
Mm-hmm.
hero, right? And then like, ooh, who can't associate with that, especially if you
Mm-hmm.
grow up in that.
Trying to juggle time, trying to find a way to do what's right, but at the same time be responsible.
Yeah. In this most in a recent story arc that I've only just finished reading,
Mm-hmm.
is that so there's this guy called the Sin Eater, and for some reason he has gained the ability. He was already dead, but he's come
Mm-hmm.
back. But he's gained the ability to convert villains into repentant citizens
Okay.
and takes away their powers. And he's
Okay.
like literally like there was this stupid villain named Overdrive where his only power was he when he gets into any vehicle he can supercharge it with
Mhm.
his nanites and then it becomes like a tricked out vehicle. So that
Okay.
was his power. But after getting shot by the Sin Eater, he repents his wrongs and then no longer has his power ability, which now we're seeing in later issues. Okay, parang it's getting absorbed by Sin Eater, so it's me.
Mm.
We knew something's wrong, and then the what became the true conflict of the particular volume I
Mhm.
finished is that the Sin Eater has set his targets on Norman Osborn, who
Okay.
is the Green Goblin, who is
Yes.
like Peter Parker's Spider-Man's most
Mhm.
terrible villain. And
And he
then
became the president at one point, right?
yes.
Mhm.
And then suddenly dilemma. Oh, no, that was Lux Luthor. I realized he was just head of like Hammer,
Okay.
which
Okay. Okay.
replaced
Yes.
Shield.
Yes. Yes.
Luther was president.
Yes.
But then it's the dilemma of should he quote unquote save Norman from the Sin Eater's
Mhm.
attack? But then the Sin Eater's attack is just going to turn him into
Good.
turn
Okay.
him
Good.
good. So
Mhm.
then should he let it happen?
Yes.
And in the end, because Spider-Man is Spider-Man, because Peter Parker is Peter Parker, he still tries to save him,
Mhm.
even though Norman has no intention of being saved by the likes of Spider-Man.
Mhm.
And it's just, I love that. I love that. I love that purity. And it's not an easy decision. He actually had to consult with different
Mhm.
spider-powered heroes before he got to that point. And then, uh, and then I love that. So I love how flawed Peter Parker as a character still is, but
Mhm.
then over the years, his moral compass is what keeps him going and what keeps him Spider-Man. And then the day he compromises that, then it may be a problem.
Mhm.
So I just like that aspect.
It might also help to try to realize that people we see as heroes, um, it's a temporal thing
That's true
because
too.
someone who you do see as a hero might not be your hero later on, or might not be your
He
hero
was your
forever.
hero at that moment.
Yes, and I think that's one of the things that's tricky because when it comes to labels, there's this desire to make labels be permanent. You know, I called you my hero, therefore you must always be my hero.
Mm.
But it's not limited to that. It could even be, I called you my dad, so you're always my dad, or I called you my best friend, so you're always my best friend. But people change, things happen,
See, this
circumstances
is
can
why I
affect
don't like
things.
being called dad by friends.
Okay, that's totally different.
No, it's not entirely different. There are some that are clearly, especially young LGBT individuals who I know are just looking for like alternate family
Hmm.
structures for support,
Hmm.
and then we're not super close, and then they're like, "Oh, can you be like a dad to me?" And like,
No,
no,
I think that's more fetish than
no, I
support.
don't think it's entirely. Of course, there are a fair number that are fetishy, but then there are others that are
Hmm.
saying that
Let me think.
that are saying that they
I do
want
it.
to be that they want a dad figure
Hmm.
because of you know certain non-sexualized traits that
Yes.
they like. And then
Hmm.
it's like even like the one friend who like already thinks of us as his favorite gay geeky dads, and like
Hmm.
I mean
Okay, we haven't
why,
really
but
met you
we
yet.
haven't met you.
We don't really know anything about
So
you.
it's like I don't, and I get it. And Karen says it's a challenge to be on a pedestal, and then
Yes.
I think that captures it
Hmm.
exactly. Like, for someone to even like on a friendly basis, like want to look up to me or
Hmm.
us in any degree and call us dads or whatnot. It's like ooh, I don't feel comfortable because it's such a big
It
thing.
has weight.
It has a lot of weight,
Hmm.
and then like so it's one thing to admire people, it's another to be admired, and both. It's difficult to find people worthy of admiration. It is challenging to be that person.
And
Okay, and then someone else has acknowledged the fetish. There you go. So
and I think it also um, what people forget is that when they choose to use these labels, the labels apply both ways.
yes.
So, for example, if you start calling someone dad, then the implication there is you're the son, which means makinig ka. Don't
Whoa.
don't like
Whoa.
ask for advice but not listen.
We went there.
And in a similar token, if you choose to see someone as an inspiration or as your as your hero, then that means you're also trying to live up to that. See,
Yeah.
because you have a lot of people who throw the labels around, but it doesn't seem to have
And don't do the work.
any weight. Yeah,
Yes.
and it's common because people sometimes just enjoy the labels as a fun aspect to throw.
That's true. And then maybe it's just that people assign different
Mhm.
degrees of meaning and importance on it. And then
Mhm.
thus I always tell people like, I'm sorry, if you really want me or us to be
Mhm.
like dads to you, then you gotta earn it. It's
Mhm.
like it's a
No, you gotta bend over and I'll slap you in the butt if you're naughty, sort of thing. Oh wait,
okay,
did we mean something
it's
else?
gone
Oh,
to a
sorry,
totally
I'm
terrible
sorry.
direction. Don't
That was
excite
something
members
else.
of the
That
audience.
was
Right.
something.
Ew. Okay, no. I was being serious.
But yeah, it
Uh,
has to go both ways.
so that's why even the term friend
Yes, actually.
I definitely consider very carefully,
Mhm.
and like I don't necessarily. I mean, like that's why I'm very deliberate, and I'll say like we're social media contacts, or like we're or friends on Twitter
Mhm.
or friends on Facebook, but it's not like we're friends, and
Yeah.
then we're not even close friends.
I also relate in the sense that um like even with the group of friends, in as much as it was a joke, the best friend thing with Flip, Urim, and
Ah,
Josh,
yes,
it was a fun joke because we all understood where we were coming from.
yeah.
But if I were to have to honestly, let's say we're getting married, who's the best man? I hate that. I hate having to rank people and like, okay, so this person's above everyone else. I don't want to do that because it has to go both ways. It also implies that I've been there for that person as well in that level. So I hate placing myself in that sort of a microscope.
Huh, Mitch says, I understand. I have a similar situation. Started as a joke, being a quote unquote real mom or friend's child, but later became uncomfortable like I had this responsibility on things raising the kid. Can I outright correct the statement? Which
Hmm.
is, it's fair. It's like it's in the same neighborhood as when every Tom, Dick, and Harry ask you to become the ninong or ninang of their child.
Hmm.
And then sometimes like, are you seriously asking me to be the godparent to this child? Because is it just to be yet another name on the baptismal sheet? And it weirds me out when you have like 10 people
Hmm.
like as the godparents. Or are you seriously asking me that if you die, I have to take your kid? Then again, I take it very seriously. And hence, like, I think the main ninong relationship I take very seriously is my nephew at the moment. And I
Hmm.
don't know how it's gonna go when my sister gives birth again.
Yeah, I know
That's another kid.
I know I've already neglected a lot of Ninong duties. Um, like Iman's kid is like already in college or something.
Yeah.
And we've barely been in touch with them. But I'd like to think that if the worst happens, we would, be willing to do our responsibility. Which is why I already have started to turn down some friends who would like, can you be a ninong? And I'm like, I'm sorry, marami na akong.
Oh yeah,
Because
super turned down.
because I honestly tell them, if the worst happens, I have to be sure I'm available. So I can't accept the responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of people saying malas yan and all that to say, but I personally feel better
No,
to be honest
yeah, then
than.
if you're really trying to be a true godparent, taking responsibility for someone, and it's yeah. So it all ties back to just the way we impart value on things and
Mhm.
relationships, um and then so that goes back to also why it's so difficult for me to like tag heroes also
Mhm.
because because I adhere to a very particular standard for myself,
Mhm.
and then I apply that same rubric. Ooh, rubric, what a nerd! To other people, then it's like really hard. Then it's like
Oh,
not like that. Oh my god, you're incorrigible.
no, I'm just
Not worthy of admiration.
I'm just enjoying your vocabulary. Such a talented man.
That's not what you wanted to say.
We're still in the show.
That's not what you wanted
Anyway,
to say.
okay, so heroes. We are
It's
already
a show
past.
you don't like.
We're already because it's so derivative, and I hate how. Okay, Anyway,
I always trigger Toby when I bring it up. It's amazing.
um, yeah. Okay, I guess to wrap it up, superheroes in terms of the heroes we admire who are superheroes. So Spider-Man's definitely on the higher
I'm
ranks.
always Peter Parker 616
But
Spider-Man.
yes, as we were saying, temporal is important.
Yeah, literally.
But is there a point in time that that heroism you have of Spider-Man cuts off? For example, does it end when you reach one more day? Because then you're like, hey, why did he do that? I don't like how it's written from that point on.
But which is
Did it end when he stopped being the student and he's now multimillionaire Spider-Man owning the Avengers Tower?
not even.
Okay.
He owned the Baxter Building, not
Oh,
the
Baxter
Avengers
Building.
Tower.
Baxter, yeah, Baxter Building. It was Doc Ock who.
Because I like even millionaire Spider-Man. Because
Mhm.
number one, he only became a millionaire because of Doc Ock. And
Mhm.
then when he resumed his identity, he's still making very stupid Peter Parker decisions.
Mhm.
It just there was so much money behind it now,
Mhm.
and that's why the company didn't last.
Hey,
They couldn't keep him as a millionaire for
Mhm.
too long because it just didn't work out because he's Peter Parker and
Mhm.
it perseveres. So I that's why I appreciate like Spider-Man rings true very strongly all
Mhm.
throughout. It's like I mean like to some degree before and I could I gained an appreciation for Batman as a
Mhm.
hero because he's human and he's doing so many things. But then like the way that DC has transformed, flipped over, and reversed itself so many times in the last few years
Mhm.
has made it very difficult to appreciate anything they do anymore. And like I don't even know which Batman it is, and yeah, so
Oh my
yeah,
gosh! Oh, for a brief moment we hit 10, and then it's gone. Because it dropped back below.
yeah.
So, but yes, for a brief moment we hit 10. Um, minus hero Wonder Woman. Karen asks, I liked the Wonder Woman in the earlier DC stories when Wonder Woman was sort of separate from the DC heroes.
What do you mean?
Um, it's sort of because there was a time Wonder Woman was approached the way they're approaching Thor now, which is Thor's obviously from Asgard, so the world is strange to him.
Because like she's on a whole other
And
level.
and there was
She's
a time
practically godlike.
when there was a time Wonder Woman was approached that way, wherein she's very, she's very idealistic, and when she talks to Batman or Superman, and they have to explain mortal stuff, and she's like looking at cell phones, wondering why people are using the device, and
Mm,
because she was very, diplomat from Themyscira, they say that
yeah.
way, and she had this regalness to her. I think that was a very early approach to Wonder Woman, prior to her becoming the one who has a crush on Batman and beheading people and stuff like that. Yeah, for me that was for me when she was super heroic. Um, Mitch shares Nancy Drew.
Well, Mitch and Mina.
Mitch and Mina. Mm. And then me, as odd as it would be, my heroes in the New Mutants line of superheroes, um, the one I liked the most in that group was Warlock and Cypher.
Yeah, I know you talk about this a lot.
Warlock because he was an alien who could turn into anything, love shape changers. And then Cypher because literally his power was just translation
Understanding.
and friendship. So he befriended Warlock and they became the closest buds. Um,
And now he's friends with an island.
and now he's like super strong because they made his translation power super cool, which is not that bad. But for me, I kind of lost more inspiration towards him because he became too much.
Yeah.
But then prior to them, there was Power Pack, which was a bunch of
And
kids.
it's just so fun. These things that Toby likes. It's just
There
amazing.
was a bunch of kids who were siblings and would get into sibling fights while they tried to deal with threats with their powers. There was even one episode that they're with Wolverine
Mm.
and fighting the Marauders in the sewers, and it
Oh
was
god.
crazy funny. And one of the things I liked the most about that comic was that there's points in the story when the powers switch around.
Mm.
So you have all the sibling, I used it better when it was my power. Well, it's
Oh,
my power now, and it was such a
okay.
beautiful mesh of things. And then lastly, of course, would be Legion of Superheroes. Because again, they sort of combined what I liked about New Mutants and Power Pack. Because now you had a group of kids, each with a distinct power
Yes.
from a different planet, and they all had to work together despite having all the peanuts. So those were my heroes as far as who I counted as heroes in the superhero area.
I think one other maybe like notable fictional hero, which is like hard to admire, but I just really enjoy is probably Harry Dresden of
Mm.
the Dresden
Mm-hmm.
Files. The way he's written in the books is amazing, and he is far from a perfect character.
Mm-hmm.
He's super flawed. He's struggling all the time. He makes poor decisions.
Mm-hmm.
But then, and I think it's the same thing. Like, but he has such a very particular moral compass that also sees him through. And despite everything that's happened to him across so many books now,
Mm-hmm.
then he's still Harry Dresden.
Mm-hmm.
And and I worry that if they will ever, because they've been teetering or bordering on like what if his fundamental nature is changed or
Mm-hmm.
is changing
What
because
if
of
he's no longer human and he's
yes,
yeah.
and what makes him stop becoming Dresden. And I think that really if it reaches that point, then the series ends, like,
Mm-hmm.
or like the character ends, because he's so stubborn and set in his ways. He's a different kind of Spider-Man when I think about
Mm-hmm.
it. So yeah, so I guess that I can't think of anyone else that I really
Karen
like.
mentions Miranda is a hero, diba, Mitch?
She is a triumph. She is an inspiration, a story,
Mm-hmm.
moist.
Thinking of other comic lines.
Okay.
Um, as one of my personal heroes in the lesser known comics was Enigma from the Enigma limited
Mm,
series of Vertigo, and it's a weird thing to cite because he does not act as a hero, but um, I loved how he was just a freak of nature type of hero who was not he didn't give a care if people didn't understand him, and he just
which again, I think it points
reflected
back
himself,
to not necessarily like him being heroic per se for his comic book adventures
but being a
themselves,
personal.
but because of the value it represented
Yes,
to you, and
yes.
like it was a sign that you
Mm-mm.
you as an LGBT person could be whoever you wanted to
Yes.
be and not be limited by what everybody says.
Especially because that was during the times when I was super not yet okay with being myself. And then I think the last one I can state would be Steven Universe.
Oh, that's nice.
Diba? Steven Universe has, despite all the story arcs, including an examination on trauma and
Mm,
depression, um, has still risen beyond the pain to choose friendship and to choose forgiveness and acceptance
yeah,
as his arsenal and strength.
it's a
And
super powerful narrative.
it's very moving. It's very inspiring. It's easy to dismiss Steven Universe as a kiddie show,
Mm-hmm.
but it will grow on you if you give it a chance to reveal itself. Because the show does start very kiddie. It's not
Yeah,
yet aware that it can
very
stretch
freak
its
of the week.
limbs, but eventually it just it hits deep, it hits hard, and it keeps you going.
That's nice. I think that's a nice place to end this
Hmm.
episode. Steven Universe and his power of love and friendship.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So this is our Friday episode on Heroes We Admire. We are ending earlier only because we want to support the upcoming show of
Which may have started
yeah of
already.
Samael
Samael
Says Khan,
says.
who is having his birthday show tonight.
Yeah, it's
Um,
a drag king,
with
ladies and
with the
gentlemen.
other drag artists. So please do support and watch those shows as well. Tip them if you can. But we shall be wrapping up, and we hope to see you there. So thank you for watching this episode. We
Oh,
had a lot
Mina
of fun.
says we're heroes too because we provide a way for us to talk and hang out,
Oh,
which is nice.
thank
Speaking
you.
of, like, we don't have a game tomorrow. I was wondering, like, do you want to play board games?
Maybe we can do a board game, virtual board
Virtual,
game
yeah.
night, Or maybe we can do a one shot. I don't know. We'll see. Because I know sila Mayna also have been hoping to play
That's
an
true.
RPG.
We really have to prep for that too.
Or, there's always protocol and practice games, which are
Totally
zero
sense.
prep. Jim Pinto was one of my heroes.
See, gonna say it.
Ah!
Gonna say it. Gonna say it. Shouldn't I be concerned? No.
No, of course not.
I'm just teasing.
Yeah, you always tease me. It was David Mack you were teasing me too, which also I'm a hero. Okay, so
You brought it up. But that's a different kind of teasing. I just tease it because you turned super fanboy.
yes, I really fanboy now. I really
You have this very tall person trying to huddle into a small shape
I
and
re-
like, hi.
I really disintegrate in front of someone I admire, and I'm just
Yeah. And then you know how upset you were that you didn't think to bring anything to have signed, and then you were so angry, and then I don't want to see him anymore. And we're literally in a comic book convention, so let's find something to sign.
yeah,
And we still found something to sign that you did not own.
yes, alchemy.
See? Skills. Skills.
Oh my gosh.
And then in the end, pushed him to the booth to sign.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and
That's
probably
got it.
freaked him out.
yes, because
I was on the verge of tears and just babbling everything while he was like, "Oh my gosh." Anyway,
precious,
yes.
absolutely precious.
But thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for spending some time with us this Friday night. We had a lot of fun, and we hope you'll join us again next time.
For questions or suggestions for future episodes, fill up the Google form at bit.ly Baduy Pride Ideas. You can follow us on Twitter, Altobi No Shade, RG Suniko.
You can also check out our blog, baduypride.com, for all the previous episodes and stuff about us.
Feel free to continue the conversation in the comments below and tell us more about who you admire. We actually have another sort of hero-related topic again on Sunday, right? What did we talk about on Sunday? How do we phrase it? Because something else. Oh no, did prep.
Yeah, I can't remember. Oh wow.
No, but remember we moved the original Friday topic to Sunday, and then we said it would match, and then it's moments of courage.
Yes,
Moments
yes,
of
yes.
courage.
So,
It's
because
more
again,
valor,
it's
bravery.
still connected to the Araw ng Kagitingan, but we then wanted to make it an more open topic. So it would be a chance to talk about and share when moments we all feel we were able to display courage,
Mhm.
or moments of courage we admire, and we, by seeing it, we felt ourselves become stronger, become braver.
Mhm. So that's Sunday.
So please join us then.
All right. Yeah, and then and then be sure to subscribe for notifications, whether on Facebook or YouTube, so you don't miss our next live stream. Once again, I'm Rocky,
And I'm Toby.
and this is Baduy Pride.
Thanks